Welcome back. This is part 2 of this lesson. We're going to continue immediately from the end of part 1, so let's get started. So the root zone is a good place to move on to now. And remember, DNS is a system of trust. So at this point, we only trust the root zone. So I'm oversimplifying things a little and assuming a laptop is querying DNS directly for www.amazon.com, and it's doing this by using a root hints file, so it knows how to access a root server, and because of that it can query the root zone. So when something is trusted in DNS, it's an authority. It's known as authoritative. So one part of DNS can be authoritative for root, another part could be authoritative for Amazon.com. If you hear that word, think trusted. The root zone is the starting point of DNS, and so at the start, it's the only thing that's authoritative in DNS. The other concept I want you to be comfortable with is delegation. The root zone, which remember is the only thing that we trust at the start of the DNS process, the root zone can delegate a part of itself to another entity or another zone. That someone else then becomes authoritative for just the part that's delegated. It's authoritative because the root starts off as being authoritative and it trusts the new thing. Now the root zone, and thus the zone file, is just a database. It's a database of the top level domains. The top level domains are the only thing immediately to the left of the root in a DNS name. So examples are .com, .org and .uk. Some top level domains such as .uk are known as country code top level domains or CC-TLDs. And others are known as generic TLDs or GTLDs because they aren't mapped to a specific country. And the .com and .org are two examples of generic TLDs. So this is the root database of DNS. It's the root zone of DNS. All that is a list of top-level domains, both generic and country code TLDs. Now this root database, this root zone, is managed by IANA, and it's pretty much just a list of delegations. IANA don't run anything else in DNS apart from the root zone. They delegate management to other organizations known as registries. So one registry will manage .org, another .uk and another .com. Let's have a look at this and we'll go into the .com record. So this has been delegated to VeriSign. The way that delegation happens is that in the record for .com in the root zone, there's a set of name server entries which point at other DNS name servers. This is how the root zone delegates part of itself to other registries. These name servers listed here now become authoritative for .com, so they're trusted. So in this example, inside the root zone, there are a number of name servers for .com which point at another server, and that server is managed by VeriSign, and VeriSign hosts the .com zone. At this point, because the root zone trusts it, the .com zone is now authoritative for .com. It's been delegated that trust from the root zone. Now this .com zone has an entry in it for Amazon.com. Now this has one or more name servers associated with it, which were added when the Amazon.com domain was registered. More on this in the next lesson. But these name servers delegate again to another zone, so the Amazon.com zone. Now this Amazon.com zone might be on a server that you would manage if you worked at Amazon.com. This zone is trusted by the .com zone, and the .com zone is trusted by the root zone, and so you trust it for Amazon.com. It's authoritative for Amazon.com. It contains a DNS record www which maps to an IP address, and this IP address is what you need to communicate with the Amazon.com web server. This is how the chain of trust works in DNS. DNS is consulted, and at each step, using name server records, it delegates part of that trust to another entity until you get to the point where you've got the zone that you're looking for the particular domain name, and that zone will have a record in it for the thing that you're looking for. So let's have a look at the actual process that occurs during a DNS lookup. We start with our client, and it wants to communicate with www.amazon.com. Now, our client uses a server inside its internet provider, which is a resolver server. The first step is that the resolver server uses its root hints file and it communicates with the DNS root servers. It asks these root servers for any information on www.amazon.com. Now, the root servers don't have the actual DNS record for this, but they can help the resolver get closer. They provide the .com servers because they have the name server records for the .com authoritative servers. So because they've delegated to .com, they have that information. Next, the resolver server communicates with the name servers which are authoritative for the .com domain. Again, it asks for information for www.amazon.com. Now, the server is only authoritative for .com, so it doesn't actually have any information on www.amazon.com, but it does have the name servers which are authoritative for Amazon.com because it's delegated that right when the domain was registered, and so it returns those name servers. Next, the resolver communicates with one of those servers which are authoritative for Amazon.com. It again asks for the information on www.amazon.com. This time, because the server is authoritative for the zone Amazon.com, which is where the record resides, it can respond. And so it responds with the IP address that we're looking for, www.amazon.com. The resolver gets this response, forwards it back to the client, which the client can then use to communicate with the www.amazon.com web server. This process is known as walking the tree. It's the process of querying the root and asking for a very detailed answer which the root cannot give, but it can give it the next step in the chain. So it can give it .com. That next hop can't give it the information it needs, but it can give it Amazon.com, and then that next step in the chain can give it the information. This is a key thing to understand about DNS. Information is distributed, and delegation is used to move you closer to the information that you need. It happens without you realizing it. Generally, it's done by a resolver server, which is either in your internet router or your internet provider. It's known as a recursive resolver because it handles the process for you. You query the resolver and it handles all of these intermediate steps and just gives you the answer. Now, in the next lesson, I'm going to register a domain that's going to be used for the scenario that's in the course. Before I do that, I just want to summarize a few points. First, the root hints file is something that's provided by the operating system vendor and contains a list of all of the DNS root servers. It's basically the fallback way that any DNS server can always talk to the DNS root. Next, we've got root servers, and they're the things that host the DNS root zone. The root zone is the database that has a list, an authoritative list of all of the top level domains. So for all of these top level domains, .com, .org, .uk, it has a record which points at the authoritative name servers that it has delegated control to. So for example, for .com, it has a list of name servers that are authoritative for .com. And that's how that chain is linked from one step to the next. We've got GTLD, which is a generic top-level domain, examples being .com and .org, and then CCTLD, which are country code top-level domains, and examples of this are .uk and .eu. So that's everything I wanted to cover in this lesson. It's been a lot of theory, and it is a relatively complicated topic, so if you don't understand it, after having watched this video the once, I do recommend that you watch the video again. It is going to be massively valuable if you fully understand DNS before you start getting into any of the more complicated topics of the course. And I'll be referring back to DNS lots as I talk about EC2 or VPC or any of the other AWS services, because DNS is used constantly. It's used in service discovery, it's used in failover. There's lots of points in this course and in the exam where you'll need to understand DNS. Now, in the next lesson, I'm going to talk briefly about how a domain is registered, and then I'm going to demonstrate the process of actually registering a domain using Route 53 inside AWS. At this point, that's everything I wanted to cover. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and complete this video, and when you're ready, join me in the next.